Tippett, I think, once said that in order to set a poem, you actually have to destroy its music, which I think is a little bit drastic, to be honest. He was arguing that that a musical setting is going to impose different constraints that are at odds with the poem's original music. It's possible he was thinking primarily of metrical poetry, and I will say that I tend not to set metrical poetry. I find metrical poetry harder to set than asymmetrical poetry, because with metrical poetry there is always this tug of war, I suppose, with the banal, simple way of delivering a poem that corresponds purely to its original poetic metre. There have been times when I've set metrical poetry, and when I do, I'm not at pains to respect the original metre. In fact, I seek out ways of responding to the text stresses where they may go against the poetic stresses, which often happens. The biggest challenge in terms of, I suppose, the natural rhythm of text is to do with speed of delivery. And especially in a long work, you need to find ways of varying this. But there are some texts which actually give you very little room. One that I'm thinking of is Hurdy-Gurdy, the second last movement of Giving Voice, which is by the Tasmanian poet Gina Mercer, and it's clearly a piece of performance poetry, and it has to be delivered really, really fast. It would make absolutely no sense to deliver it slowly, apart from the fact that it would take about 20 minutes, because it's a lot of words. The whole point of that poem is a breathless assault of text coming at you really fast. And so, in a sense, that was an easy poem to set, because all I had to do was more or less find the fastest way that could practically be delivered in a sung voice, and that determined the music of that poem. But then either side of that, for example, there are poems that are much more spacious. The poem that precedes it, The Stars, is this very oblique, mysterious poem. By the way, I'm not convinced that a composer always needs to know what a poem means entirely in order to set it. They have to have some inklings, I suppose, but I'm still not exactly sure what The Stars means. I think it's incredibly beautiful and incredibly evocative of a variety of possibilities, but I've never asked the poet what it means. In that poem, the voice actually moves between extremes in terms of how fast the text is delivered. Some syllables go past really, really quickly, others are very, very elongated, so that, within a slow metre, a note might last. A syllable might last a semiquaver, or it might last like a bar of 3/2. It might be very, very stretched out. I worked out that Hurdy-Gurdy had to be only 3 minutes long, because you couldn't deliver it any more slowly. But that meant that actually a lot more weight ended up on Girl Swinging than I'd originally intended, and it seemed to really respond beautifully to a very, very sort of leisurely pacing. In another context, maybe if it hadn't been preceded by the intensity of Hurdy-Gurdy, you could imagine a very, very different setting of that poem. It might have taken half the time. So finding the music of a poem, it's not actually only that there's one possible music for a poem, it's the context may alter how it needs to be sung.